When the body's energy system stops working well, the problem is not motivation, effort, or discipline. The problem is that cells are no longer producing energy at the rate the body expects. I'm Dr. Warren Hung. I'm a medical doctor, and in this video, I want to explain energy the way it actually works in the body, and why so many people feel tired even when their blood tests look normal. To understand this, we need to rewind and look at how energy is supposed to be made. Every cell in your body needs energy to do its job. Muscle cells need it to move. Brain cells need it to think and focus. Immune cells need it to respond. Heart cells need it to beat every second, without rest. That energy does not come from sleep itself. It does not come from coffee. It does not come from motivation. Energy comes from a structure inside cells called the mitochondria. Mitochondria are small units inside almost every cell. Their job is simple to describe. They take fuel and oxygen and turn it into usable energy. The energy they make is called ATP. ATP is like the cell's spending money. When a cell needs to do something, it spends ATP. If ATP supply is steady, the body feels normal. If ATP supply falls behind demand, the body feels tired. This matters because the body does not slow its demands just because energy production drops. Your brain still expects focus. Your muscles still expect movement. Your organs still expect maintenance and repair. When mitochondria cannot keep up, the body enters a quiet energy shortage. This kind of shortage does not feel dramatic at first. It feels like low stamina, slower recovery, needing more effort for the same tasks. Over time, the gap widens. Many people assume this means they are low-energy people. That is not a medical category. What is happening is that the energy factories inside cells are underperforming. Mitochondria are not static. They are living structures. They respond to signals from food intake, hormones, inflammation, and oxygen delivery. They can adapt and repair. They can also become inefficient. When mitochondria are healthy, they produce energy with very little waste. When they are stressed or damaged, they produce less energy and more byproducts that interfere with cell function. This is where long-term fatigue begins. Importantly, this failure does not switch on overnight. It develops gradually. The body compensates for a long time. You can still function. You can still work. You can still push through, but the margin is gone. This is why telling someone to just sleep more often does not solve the problem. Sleep is important, but sleep does not rebuild broken machinery by itself. This is also why stimulants feel helpful at first. They increase demand and alertness. They do not fix production. In clinical medicine, when a system fails slowly, symptoms are often vague before they are obvious. Energy is one of the earliest signals. So, when someone says, "I don't feel like myself anymore," that is not a personality issue. It is often an energy regulation issue. In this video, I will show you how mitochondria normally work, how they become dysfunctional, and why this produces the kind of fatigue people struggle to explain. But to understand why mitochondria fail, we need to look at what stresses them over years, not days. Mitochondria do not usually fail because of one bad day. They fail because of repeated stress that the body does not fully recover from. To understand this, it helps to remember that mitochondria are working all the time. They are not storage units. They are active machines that respond to signals every minute. Each mitochondrion takes in fuel, oxygen, and chemical instructions from the rest of the body. When those inputs are balanced, energy production stays efficient. When the inputs become distorted, energy production slowly degrades. One major source of stress is chronic inflammation. Inflammation is the immune system's alert signal. In the short term, it is protective. The problem begins when inflammation stays slightly elevated for years. This can come from repeated infections, excess visceral fat, untreated sleep disorders, autoimmune conditions, or long-standing metabolic strain. Inflammatory signals interfere with how mitochondria handle fuel. They reduce efficiency. They increase internal damage. Another stress comes from impaired insulin signaling. Insulin is a hormone that helps move fuel into cells. When cells stop responding to insulin well, fuel delivery becomes erratic. Mitochondria are either flooded with fuel they cannot use properly or starved when they need it. Both states are stressful. Over time, mitochondria adapt by slowing down. They reduce output to protect themselves. That protection feels like fatigue at the whole body level. Oxygen delivery also matters. Mitochondria require oxygen to make energy efficiently. When blood flow is impaired, when red blood cell function is reduced, or when lung or cardiovascular capacity declines, mitochondria are forced into lower yield energy production. This produces less ATP and more metabolic waste. That waste further interferes with cellular signaling. Nutrition plays a role, but not in the way it is often described online. Mitochondria do not respond to single nutrients in isolation. They require steady availability of proteins, minerals, and vitamins that support enzyme systems. When intake is inconsistent or absorption is impaired, mitochondria become less reliable. They may still function, but not at full capacity. This is especially relevant in people with digestive disorders, long-term restrictive diets, or chronic gastrointestinal inflammation. Hormonal signaling also affects mitochondrial health. Thyroid hormones, cortisol, sex hormones, and growth signals all influence how much energy mitochondria are instructed to produce. When these signals are distorted, mitochondria receive mixed instructions. They may be told to conserve energy even when the body demands more. That mismatch creates a persistent, low-energy state. Another important factor is oxidative stress. This term sounds technical, but the idea is simple. Energy production creates small amounts of chemical residue. Healthy mitochondria clean this up efficiently. When production is inefficient, residue builds up faster than it can be cleared. That residue damages mitochondrial structures. Damaged mitochondria produce less energy and more residue. This creates a slow feedback loop. Aging adds another layer. As we age, mitochondrial turnover slows. Old mitochondria stay in service longer than they should. New mitochondria are made more slowly. This does not mean aging causes fatigue by itself. It means recovery from stress takes longer. If stress accumulates faster than repair, function declines. Importantly, none of this requires extreme behavior or obvious disease. Many people with mitochondrial dysfunction appear outwardly healthy. Standard lab tests may fall within reference ranges. Clinical medicine often struggles here because the system is failing at a functional level, not a catastrophic one. The body compensates by reallocating energy. Less energy goes to repair. Less energy goes to resilience. More energy goes to keeping core systems running. That trade-off keeps people alive and working, but not well. This is why energy loss is often the first symptom people notice. It appears before clear disease labels apply. At this stage, people are often told nothing is wrong. Medically, nothing obvious is broken. Functionally, the energy system is under strain. Understanding this gradual breakdown matters because it explains why quick fixes rarely work. The problem develops slowly. It resolves slowly. And once mitochondria begin underperforming, we need to understand how that underperformance turns into the symptoms people actually feel. When people say they have low energy, they are usually describing a mismatch. Their body is asking for more than their cells can deliver. This is not the same as being sleepy. Sleepiness improves with rest. Mitochondrial fatigue often does not. To understand the feeling, think again about ATP. ATP is the unit of usable energy inside cells. Every action in the body spends ATP. When mitochondria produce ATP at the rate the body expects, effort feels proportional. You do something. You recover. You do it again. When production falls behind, effort feels expensive. Simple tasks start to cost more than they should. Climbing stairs requires more planning. Concentration fades sooner. Recovery takes longer. The brain is especially sensitive to this. Brain cells use large amounts of energy even at rest. They do not store fuel well. They depend on constant ATP supply. When mitochondrial output drops, the brain compensates by narrowing focus. Attention becomes shallow. Thinking feels slow or foggy. This is not a motivation problem. It is an energy allocation problem. Muscles respond in a similar way. When ATP supply is limited, muscles shift toward short-term energy strategies. They fatigue faster. They recover more slowly. This is why people say, I can still do things, but I pay for it later. The body also protects itself by reducing non-essential energy use. Repair processes slow down. Hormone signaling becomes less precise. Immune responses become less efficient. These changes are subtle. They do not show up as one clear symptom. They show up as a general sense of depletion. Another important piece is stress tolerance. Stress requires energy, not emotional energy. Physical, cellular, energy. When mitochondria are underperforming, even mild stress can feel overwhelming. The body does not have extra ATP to buffer the response. This is why people with mitochondrial dysfunction often feel worse under pressure, even if they are mentally calm. Stimulants complicate this picture. Caffeine and similar substances increase alertness by signaling the nervous system to stay active. They do not increase mitochondrial capacity. For a short time, demand goes up while production stays the same. This creates the feeling of borrowed energy. Borrowed energy must be paid back. Over time, reliance on stimulants widens the gap between demand and production. The crash feels worse. Baseline energy feels lower. This does not mean stimulants are harmful by default. It means they do not solve the underlying problem. The body is also very good at hiding energy deficits. It prioritizes survival over comfort. Heart function is protected. Breathing is protected. Energy loss shows up first in quality of life domains. Focus. Stamina. Motivation to initiate tasks. That is why people often doubt themselves. They assume the problem is psychological. In clinical practice, this misunderstanding is common. People are told their symptoms are nonspecific. They are advised to manage stress or sleep better. Those things matter, but they do not explain the mechanism. The mechanism is simple. Energy demand exceeds energy production. Once this mismatch exists, the body adapts around it. Those adaptations feel like chronic fatigue. Understanding this connection is important because it shifts the goal. The goal is not to push harder. The goal is to restore production capacity. That requires addressing the mitochondria directly, not just the symptoms they create. But if energy loss comes from mitochondrial dysfunction, the next question is, what can realistically support repair and what cannot? If energy loss comes from mitochondrial dysfunction, the solution is not to push the system harder. The solution is to repair how energy is produced. This is not a hack. It is a sequence. Mitochondria recover only when the conditions around them improve. That improvement follows a predictable order. I will walk you through this as a 4-part protocol, because mitochondria respond to systems, not single actions. 1. Remove chronic mitochondrial blockers. The first step is not adding anything. It is removing what blocks energy production. Mitochondria slow down when they are constantly exposed to signals that mean danger or overload. The most common blocker is chronic inflammation. Inflammation tells cells that the environment is unsafe. When that signal stays on, mitochondria reduce output to limit damage. This signal can come from many places: visceral fat tissue, untreated sleep apnea, autoimmune activity, chronic infections, poorly controlled metabolic disease. This is why fatigue often improves when inflammatory conditions are treated, even before lifestyle changes occur. That observation is consistent across clinical medicine. Another blocker is persistent insulin resistance. When insulin signaling is impaired, fuel delivery becomes chaotic. Mitochondria either receive too much fuel at once or too little when demand is high. Both states increase stress inside the mitochondria. Clinical guidelines from organizations such as the WHO and ADA emphasize insulin regulation because of its broad impact on organ function, not just blood sugar. A third blocker is repeated stimulant dependence. Stimulants increase demand without increasing production. When used daily to compensate for fatigue, they teach the system to run on emergency signals. This does not destroy mitochondria. It prevents recovery. Removing blockers does not restore energy immediately. It stops further damage. That matters because repair cannot occur in a hostile environment. 2. Restore mitochondrial inputs. Once blockers are reduced, mitochondria need stable inputs. Energy production requires 3 things: fuel, oxygen, micronutrient support. Fuel does not mean excess calories. It means predictable availability. Mitochondria struggle when fuel supply swings wildly. Long fasts, followed by large loads. Highly irregular intake. Severe restriction without medical supervision. Clinical nutrition research, including data from NHANES, shows that undernourishment and erratic intake are both associated with fatigue, even in people without diagnosed disease. Oxygen delivery is equally important. This depends on lung function, cardiovascular health, and blood quality. Conditions such as anemia, untreated lung disease, or poor circulation reduce mitochondrial efficiency. When oxygen delivery improves, mitochondria produce more ATP with less waste. Micronutrients support the enzymes that run energy reactions. This includes iron, magnesium, B vitamins, and others. These are not energy boosters. They are tools. If the tools are missing, the machinery slows. This is why deficiencies often cause fatigue long before other symptoms appear. Correction improves function only if the deficiency was real. Adding inputs does not force mitochondria to work harder. It allows them to work normally. 3. Reduce unnecessary energy drain. Mitochondria recover faster when demand becomes reasonable. This does not mean inactivity. It means appropriate demand. Chronic overexertion drains ATP faster than it can be replenished. Chronic underuse reduces mitochondrial capacity. The goal is balance. One major energy drain is unmanaged stress signaling. Stress hormones increase energy demand across tissues. If this state is constant, mitochondria remain in output mode without recovery time. This is why fatigue often coexists with poor stress tolerance. The system is already running close to its limit. Another drain is sleep fragmentation. Sleep does not create energy directly, but it allows repair. When sleep is broken, mitochondria remain partially stressed overnight. Clinical sleep studies consistently show that fragmented sleep reduces next-day energy independent of total sleep time. Inflammatory pain, untreated reflux, and breathing disturbances are common causes. Reducing energy drain does not feel dramatic. It feels like fewer crashes, more consistent days. That consistency allows repair to accumulate. 4. Allow time for mitochondrial turnover. This is the step most people underestimate. Mitochondria do not repair instantly. Damaged ones are removed. New ones are built. This process takes time. Mitochondrial turnover occurs over weeks to months, not days. This is why quick programs fail. They expect immediate output from structures that are still being replaced. Research on mitochondrial biogenesis, including work referenced in exercise physiology literature, shows that new mitochondria form gradually in response to sustained, appropriate signals. Consistency matters more than intensity. During this phase, energy often improves unevenly. Good days appear, then bad days return. That does not mean failure. It reflects ongoing system adjustment. Clinically, this is when people are most tempted to overcorrect. They push harder when energy rises. They crash again. Stability is what allows progress. This protocol does not promise limitless energy. It restores baseline capacity. The goal is not peak performance. The goal is normal function. When mitochondria recover, effort feels proportional again. Recovery shortens. Stimulants feel less necessary. That is the real marker of success. But even with repair underway, people need to understand why recovery feels slow and why patience is not optional in energy medicine. By the time someone realizes their energy is not normal, the problem has usually been present for years. That matters, because the body does not reverse long-standing adaptations quickly. Energy recovery feels slow because mitochondria change slowly. They are not switches. They are populations. Some mitochondria are healthy. Some are inefficient. Some are damaged and scheduled for removal. When conditions improve, the body does not instantly replace all of them. It gradually shifts the balance. This is why energy recovery often feels uneven. People notice a few better mornings, then a bad week, then another improvement. That pattern is not failure. It is turnover. Another reason recovery feels slow is that the body must relearn trust. When energy has been scarce, the nervous system adapts by conserving. It becomes cautious. Even when mitochondrial capacity improves, the system may not immediately allow higher output. It waits for consistency. This is similar to how appetite returns slowly after illness. The system tests safety before committing resources. This explains why symptom control and cause regulation feel different. Symptom control acts on perception. Caffeine increases alertness. Adrenaline increases drive. Cause regulation changes capacity. It raises the ceiling over time. People often confuse these. They feel better briefly and assume recovery is complete. They increase demand too quickly. The system pulls back. From a clinical perspective, this is predictable. Energy medicine is not about forcing output. It is about creating conditions where output becomes safe again. This is also why comparison is misleading. Some people recover faster, some recover slowly. Differences in age, inflammation burden, metabolic health, sleep quality, and baseline disease all matter. None of this reflects effort or discipline. It reflects biology. When recovery is done correctly, progress becomes stable. Energy does not spike. It evens out. People stop planning their day around fatigue. They stop budgeting every task. That is the real change. They do not feel wired. They feel normal. From a medical standpoint, that outcome is far more meaningful than short bursts of energy. It indicates that the energy system is regulated again, not just stimulated. If you take one thing from this explanation, it should be this. Persistent fatigue is not a character flaw, and it is not always a sleep problem. Very often, it is a signal that the body's energy factories are under strain. Addressing that strain takes time. But when it is addressed correctly, the improvement tends to last. If this kind of systems-level explanation is helpful to you, that is the focus of We Care Health. We explain how the body works, why it fails slowly, and what realistic recovery looks like.